when I think of the phrase, a broken clock is always right 2 times a day, I feel like people use that literally as well when people are talking to you in a conversation. And, people will ask you how you are 2 times a week, 2 times a day or so, and they'll leave you alone. It'll just kind of like that mental tick off in their brain, like, they'll ask you, how are you? How are you? And that's it. It's like they've given themselves a mental dose of dopamine to make sure that they've clicked the checkbox of making sure that you're okay. And if you ask the clock 2 times a day what time it is, they'll be right. Same thing if you ask a person 2 times a day, not even a day, they'll be alright. So you can't expect people to not elaborate on their feelings when you ask them specifically 2 times, specifically when they look the most happiest, and wonder why you aren't getting the truth, wonder why you aren't getting to the bottom of their issues. You're not asking them when they don't text you back. You're not asking them when they look a little bit down, because you don't want to dig into their emotions, you don't want to pry. But if you don't want to pry, then why do you even ask in the first place? I find that people are so shallow, and they can modify your sadness into this thing that they can diagnose and that they can talk about. Kind of a gotcha moment, like, I knew you were sad, that's why I asked. So they can have their brownie points for being a good friend, a good person, a good family member. But most people aren't good. That's what I've noticed. Most people, when I see them on the surface, they think they're a good person. When you dissect their actions, they're not even good. Or what even is good to say? What even is good as the word? Why do we call people good people? We call good people for how they act around us. We call people good for how we see, for what actions we see. Even though people talk about it's not what you say, it's your actions. But it is what you say. Because people can be so nice to your face, but in their head they're just checking a mental box. And that's just something I can't understand. We divide people into these broad brackets of good, bad. But then we can elaborate and say, not everything's that black and white. So then why do you place people into these simple boxes that belittle them into 2 categories that seriously don't even exist? Because at its core, nobody is good or evil. Nobody is bad or good. And that's what I believe, though. Because the people that I've been around that other people say, they're nice, they're good, haven't been nice to me. But they'll be described as good and nice from the other person, because that's how they perceive them. Look out of my skin and introduce myself, that would never work. And even when I think about things like heaven or hell and religion, I don't see the hype around people's proclivity and want to go to heaven and live in eternity. And that's so broad. To be a good person, to be divided into heaven or hell. You're good, so you go to heaven. You're bad, so you burn in hell. Because personally, I wouldn't want to do either. But if I had to choose, I would choose hell. And I know that's confusing to some people, but it makes sense to me. Because I wouldn't want to live an eternal life. When I look at it theoretically, it would be nice to live forever, but when you look at even movies like Vampire Diaries or Twilight, you see the characters of the vampire, they're very shallow at their core. They've lived so many lives that they know how they know the psychology of people better than any psychologist will know. And I find that would just be boring, that would just be shallow. And I don't assign myself to any religion. I say I'm atheist because I don't believe there is a God. That's not even to make this about religion, but I've just always found that so interesting, how bad and evil are such broad terms but thrown around so loosely. Because even people that are good, you never know people who are quote unquote good people. Because when you're young, you even think about good people, like, who is a good person? And you think maybe the prime minister, maybe the priest, maybe the teacher, maybe the parents. But those people, most of the time, are the worst people you would ever meet in your life. And especially politicians, like the most corrupt people ever. And same thing with people who are associated with the church. A lot of them are corrupt. When we break down that, we know that they're not inherently good people because of this a role we assign to them. And I find that so strange. Because you wouldn't say, oh look, the person who served me at grocery store, the person who works at the grocery or supermarket store is a good person. You wouldn't say that when you're thinking about good and bad people when you're younger. You might think it now, but you wouldn't. And I just have to think why we think this. But yeah, anyways, don't email me.